The night I found the letter, I sat in my car in the driveway for 2 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just stared at the garage door and thought, so this is how it ends. Not with a bang, not with some dramatic scene, just a folded piece of paper I wasn't supposed to find, sitting at the bottom of a shoebox that had been in our closet for 11 years. If you've ever had a moment where the floor just disappears beneath you, stay with me. Leave a comment below. Tell me if you've been there too, because I think more of us have than we ever admit. I was 52 years old. My kids were grown. My career had quietly unraveled the year before, and now this. I remember thinking there is nothing left to save. But I was wrong. And what happened next is the reason I'm telling you this story today. Let me take you back a few years, because to understand that night in the driveway, you need to understand what my life looked like on the surface. From the outside, Karen and I had a good marriage. 30 years, a house in a suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, the kind of neighborhood where everybody waves from their driveways and nobody really talks. We raised 2 kids there, coached Little League, sat in the same church pew every Sunday. But somewhere in the middle of all that ordinary living, we had drifted apart in a way that was so slow, so quiet, that neither of us said anything about it. We just stopped reaching for each other. We became roommates who shared a mortgage and a history and not much else. Have you ever felt alone inside a marriage? Like you're lying next to someone every night and still somehow lonely? I wonder how many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then, 3 years before that night in the driveway, I lost my job. 22 years in regional sales management. Good at it, too. But the company restructured, and at 49 years old, I was walked out of a building I'd given half my life to with a cardboard box and a handshake. I told myself I'd bounce back. I didn't. The months turned into a year. The interviews led nowhere. I took a lower position just to have income, and every morning I drove to a job that reminded me of everything I used to be. I stopped talking about it. I stopped talking about much of anything. Karen and I moved through our days like strangers on a train, polite, quiet, careful. I thought I was protecting her from my shame. I didn't realize I was disappearing. My mother had a stroke that fall. She was 79, living alone in the house I grew up in, a little 2-bedroom place in Zanesville, about an hour east of Columbus. After her stroke, I started driving out there on weekends, helping her with groceries, fixing things around the house, sitting with her on the porch while she tried to find words that used to come easy. Those drives became the most honest part of my week. One Saturday, she looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "Robert, you look like a man who's forgotten who he is." I laughed it off, but I drove home that night and I couldn't shake it. Is it ever too late to find your way back to yourself? I've asked myself that more times than I can count. The distance between Karen and I had grown into something I didn't have a name for anymore. We weren't fighting, we weren't cold, we were just absent from each other. She had her life, I had my quiet shame. We coexisted. I told myself that was enough, that this was just what marriage looked like after 30 years, that I should be grateful. But there were nights I'd sit on the back porch after she'd gone to bed, listening to the neighborhood go quiet, and I'd feel this ache, this deep, hollow ache, like I'd missed something essential somewhere along the way, and I could never get back to where I took the wrong turn. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I had stopped believing I deserved anything different. At 52, I had quietly accepted that the best of my life was behind me, that the man I had wanted to be, the father, the husband, the person of some worth and purpose, had somehow slipped away, and what was left was just the remainder, just the years left to count down. I wasn't suicidal. I want to be clear about that. It was quieter than that. It was more like grief. like mourning a life I was still living. And then I found the letter. I was looking for our tax records, old files in the closet, and I pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf, one of those boxes you stop looking inside after a while, and a folded piece of paper fell to the floor. I almost didn't pick it up. It was a letter, written by Karen, not addressed to anyone, not dated recently. Based on the paper, it had been there a long time. And as I read it, standing in our closet in my socks, I understood that it was a letter she had written to me and never sent. What I discovered in that letter destroyed me, and then it rebuilt me. She wrote about missing me, not the me who lost the job or forgot to take out the trash, but the me she fell in love with. She described a trip we took before the kids were born to the Smoky Mountains, where we stayed in a little cabin and cooked breakfast together every morning and laughed about nothing for 4 days straight. She wrote, "I don't know where that man went. I miss him. I miss us. I don't know if we can find our way back, but I'm still here. I'm still hoping." It wasn't dated. I didn't know when she'd written it, but she had kept it. All this time, she had kept it. I stood in that closet for a long time, and then something cracked open in me. Not broke, cracked open. And I cried in a way I hadn't cried since my father's funeral 15 years before. I had spent 3 years telling myself the story of a man whose life was over, and the whole time my wife had been in the next room, quietly holding on to hope I didn't know she still had. I brought the letter downstairs. Karen was at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. She looked up, saw my face, and went very still. I set the letter on the table between us. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at me. "I wrote that 2 years ago," she said quietly. "I didn't think you'd want to hear it." We talked until 2 in the morning. Not perfectly, not without tears or hard pauses, but we talked in a way we hadn't in years, like two people who were finally done pretending the distance between them wasn't real. We didn't fix everything that night. Marriage doesn't work like that. But something shifted. Something essential came back. In the months that followed, I found a therapist, something I should have done years earlier. I started volunteering at a workforce center, helping other people my age navigate job loss. Turns out I was good at it. Turns out there was still something useful left in me. My mother passed away the following spring. I held her hand at the end, and I was grateful, deeply, quietly grateful that I had stopped telling myself it was too late and had started actually showing up to my life again. Karen and I still live in that house outside Columbus. We still sit on the porch some evenings. But now, sometimes, we reach for each other. I thought my life was over at 52. It wasn't. It was just waiting for me to stop mourning it and start living it. Have you ever felt like a chapter of your life was closing, only to discover it was just a door? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. The conversations down there are sometimes the most important part of this. And if this reached something in you, something you needed to hear today, consider sharing it with someone who might need it too. There are more of us carrying this quiet weight than we ever say out loud. I'll be here with more stories like this one.